The expanse of the cosmos unfolded beyond the viewing deck of Nexus Station, a marvel of interspecies engineering that floated majestically in the neutral space between the territories of 7 advanced civilizations. The station rotated slowly, its artificial gravity maintaining a comfortable environment for the dozens of species that called it home, or at least a temporary diplomatic residence. Colonel Jake Montgomery stood at parade rest near the entrance to the grand reception hall, his military posture betraying his past as a veteran of Earth's unified defense force, now serving as the head of security for the human diplomatic mission. His sharp blue eyes constantly scanned the room, taking in every detail with practiced precision. His dark hair, peppered with gray at the temples, was cut short in military fashion, and his ceremonial uniform bore the insignia of Earth's diplomatic corps, a stylized olive branch encircling a blue planet. "Daddy, look at that!" A small voice drew his attention downward. 10-year-old Lily Montgomery, his daughter, pointed excitedly at a hovering display of what appeared to be luminescent jellyfish, each pulsing with colors that seemed to respond to the ambient sounds of the gathering. Jake smiled, his stern features softening momentarily. "Those are Aquilian thought forms, sweetheart. They're not actually alive, but they reflect the emotions of the room." He glanced at his wristcom. "Remember what we talked about? Best behavior today. This reception is very important for Earth's relations with the Galactic Council." Lily nodded solemnly, her dark curls bouncing. She wore a formal blue dress that matched her father's uniform, specially designed for this diplomatic function. "I remember, no running, no shouting, and always say pleased to meet you even if they look scary." Jake chuckled. "They probably think we look scary too." The reception was being hosted by Ambassador Kirill Vexthul of the Zephyrian Confederation, one of the oldest and most influential species in the known galaxy. The Zephyrians were tall, slender beings with iridescent scales covering their bodies and elongated craniums that housed their sophisticated ternary brains. Their civilization had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still figuring out basic agriculture, a fact they never tired of subtly reminding Earth's representatives. Today's gathering marked the 500th anniversary of the Galactic Council's formation, a momentous occasion that brought together diplomatic missions from over 30 civilizations. For humans, relatively newcomers to the interstellar community having achieved faster-than-light travel only 70 years ago, it was a rare opportunity to strengthen alliances and perhaps secure better trade agreements. "Colonel Montgomery." The voice came from behind, a carefully modulated tone that the universal translator rendered into perfect English. Jake turned to see Commander Ilara Thalos, his second in command and head of tactical operations for the security team. Her dark skin contrasted with her silver-white hair, a genetic modification popular among those born on the outer colonies. "Commander," Jake acknowledged with a nod. "Status report?" "All security protocols are functioning normally," she reported. "The Arcturian delegation has requested additional accommodations for their empaths, and the Volian representative has lodged another complaint about the atmospheric composition, but nothing out of the ordinary." Jake nodded. The Volians always complained about something. It was practically a cultural greeting for them. "And our exit protocols?" Ilara's expression remained neutral, but her eyes reflected understanding. Jake Montgomery was known for his meticulous contingency planning. 2 shuttles on standby, fully fueled, emergency evacuation routes clear and mapped to all team members' neural interfaces. Response time estimated at under 2 minutes. "Good." Jake's attention returned to Lily, who had wandered a few steps away to examine a holographic display of the Galactic Council's founding ceremony. "Sometimes I wonder if bringing her was the right decision." Ilara followed his gaze. The ambassador insisted that this reception be family inclusive. It's a statement of trust, showing that humans value their families enough to bring them into potentially dangerous diplomatic situations. That's what bothers me, Jake muttered, the potentially dangerous part. The reception hall continued to fill with representatives from across the galaxy. The Meridian delegation, beings of pure energy contained within specialized environmental suits, drifted by in formation. A group of Taurons, massive quadrupeds with philosopher-scientist casts that had revolutionized quantum computing, conversed in low rumbles near the central fountain. The Volians, insectoid beings with complex social hierarchies, kept to themselves near the atmospheric regulators they had insisted be installed. Ambassador Sophia Chen, the head of Earth's diplomatic mission, was engaged in what appeared to be pleasant conversation with a delegation of Prontarians, a species known for their photographic memories and uncompromising trade negotiations. Her elegant figure, dressed in formal diplomatic attire with Earth's insignia prominently displayed, moved with practiced grace among the alien dignitaries. Colonel, another voice, this one belonging to Lieutenant Marcus Reeves, the youngest member of Jake's security team. Ambassador Chen requests your presence at the central dais. Ambassador Vexthul is about to make the formal address. Jake nodded. Stay with Lily, he instructed Alara. I'll be back shortly. As Jake made his way through the crowd, he noted the positioning of his security team members, each strategically placed throughout the reception hall. Years of military service and diplomatic protection had taught him that peace was always a fragile thing, especially in a room full of species with vastly different cultural norms and historical grievances. Ambassador Vexthul stood at the center of a raised platform, his iridescent scales catching the light in a way that seemed designed to draw attention. The Zephyrian's elongated fingers were clasped before him in what Jake recognized as a gesture of ceremonial respect. Esteemed representatives, Vexthul began, his voice translated simultaneously into over 50 languages through the neural interfaces worn by all attendees. We gather today to commemorate 5 centuries of cooperation and peaceful coexistence under the principles established by the Galactic Council. Jake positioned himself near Ambassador Chen, scanning the crowd automatically. Something felt off, though he couldn't quite place it. Years of combat and security work had honed his instincts, and right now, they were quietly alerting him. The Council's formation marked the end of the Great Expansion Wars. Vexthul continued, and the beginning of an era where disputes are settled through diplomacy rather than destruction. Jake's eyes found Lily across the room. She had moved away from Alara and was now examining a display case containing what appeared to be ancient artifacts from the founding civilizations. He made a mental note to remind her about staying close to her assigned security. Earth's inclusion in our community, though recent, has brought new perspectives and opportunities. Vexthul was saying, their adaptability and resourcefulness are qualities that continue to impress, even as their understanding of galactic protocols sometimes lags. A subtle murmur rippled through the crowd. Jake noticed Ambassador Chen's posture stiffen slightly at what could be interpreted as either a compliment or a thinly veiled insult. His attention was suddenly drawn back to Lily. She had reached out toward one of the display cases, her small hand hovering near what appeared to be a crystalline structure that pulsed with an inner light. Before Jake could move or call out, Lily's hand made contact with the display case. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. The case, evidently not secured as it should have been, tilted precariously. The crystalline artifact inside slid toward the edge. Lily's eyes widened in horror as she tried to steady the case, but her efforts only hastened the inevitable. With a sound like shattering glass amplified 1,000-fold, The artifact crashed to the floor, splintering into countless glittering fragments. A collective gasp rose from the assembled diplomats. Ambassador Vextel stopped mid-sentence, his ternary eyes focusing with laser precision on the source of the disturbance. Jake was already moving, pushing through the crowd with practiced efficiency. "Lily!" he called out, but before he could reach her, Ambassador Vexthul had descended from the dais and crossed the room with alarming speed. The Zephyrian towered over Lily, his iridescent scales now pulsing with angry red undertones. "This," he said, voice trembling with barely contained fury, "was a Zephyrian memory crystal, one of only 7 in existence. It contained the recorded consciousness of Primus Thexel, one of our founding philosophers." Lily looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." The sound of the slap echoed through the suddenly silent reception hall. Ambassador Vexthul's elongated hand had struck Lily across the face with enough force to knock her small body to the ground. Time seemed to stop. Jake felt a roaring in his ears, a battlefield clarity descending over his mind as he covered the remaining distance in what felt like a single heartbeat. He placed himself between Vexthul and his daughter, who was now sobbing quietly on the floor, a red mark blooming on her cheek. "Did you dare strike my child?" Jake's voice was deadly quiet, the kind of calm that precedes catastrophic storms. Vexthul drew himself up to his full height, nearly 2 meters taller than Jake. The child destroyed a priceless cultural artifact. In Zephyrian society, physical correction is both expected and required when a juvenile commits such a transgression. It is a matter of honor and education. Jake felt Alara's presence as she knelt beside Lily, helping the girl to her feet and quickly checking her for injuries. The security team had already begun moving, forming a protective perimeter around them without waiting for orders. "Lieutenant Reeves," Jake said, not taking his eyes off Vexthul. "Activate protocol homeward. Authorization Montgomery Alpha 7-3. "Colonel," Ambassador Chen began, having rushed over at the commotion. "With respect, Ambassador." Jake cut her off, his voice still unnaturally calm. "A member of my family has been physically assaulted by a foreign dignitary. Protocol homeward is now in effect." Throughout the reception hall, the human security team members touched their neural interfaces, receiving the automated alert. Their movements became more purposeful, more coordinated, as they began implementing the emergency evacuation protocol that Jake had insisted on establishing. Despite diplomatic objections that it would appear untrusting. "This is a gross overreaction," Vexthul said, his translator struggling to convey the complex harmonics of indignation in his native speech. The correction was minimal and appropriate. The child must learn respect for other cultures. Jake finally looked away from Vexthul, kneeling down to Lily's level. Her cheek was red and beginning to swell, and her eyes were wide with shock and fear. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Lily nodded hesitantly, sniffling. "It hurts, Daddy." Something cold and terrible solidified in Jake's chest. He stood, turning back to face Vexthul. "Commander Thalos, please escort my daughter to Shuttle 1. Lieutenant Reeves, inform all human personnel that we are evacuating the station immediately." "Colonel Montgomery," Ambassador Chen interjected, her diplomatic training evident in her measured tone. "While I understand your concern, perhaps we can resolve this without—" "Ambassador," Jake said quietly. "With all due respect, this is not a diplomatic incident. This is assault on a human child. Our treaties with the Galactic Council are very clear on matters involving the safety of our families." By now, other diplomatic delegations had gathered around, watching the confrontation with various expressions of concern, curiosity, and in some cases what appeared to be anticipation. The Arcturian empath delegation, beings of translucent flesh with visible neural networks, had withdrawn to the far side of the hall, clearly distressed by the emotional intensity radiating from the humans. The Taurans watched impassively, their massive bodies motionless as they processed the events through their collective consciousness. The treaties also specify respect for cultural differences. Vexthul countered. In Zephyrian culture, physical discipline is a respected tradition dating back millennia. And in human culture, Jake replied, touching another person's child without permission is grounds for immediate and potentially violent response. Cultural differences cut both ways. Ambassador. Throughout the reception hall, human diplomats, staff, and their families were already being quietly ushered toward the exits by security personnel. The practiced efficiency of the evacuation was a testament to Jake's insistence on regular drills. This is absurd, Vexthul protested, addressing the gathering crowd of alien dignitaries. The humans are using a minor cultural misunderstanding to create a diplomatic incident. A new voice entered the conversation, deep, resonant, and carrying the weight of authority. Is it minor, Ambassador Vexthul? The crowd parted to reveal Admiral Zorax, the Prontarian representative to the Galactic Council's Security Committee. The Prontarians, with their photographic memories and reputation for absolute factual accuracy, were often called upon as mediators in disputes. The human child accidentally damaged a cultural artifact, Zorax continued, his 6 eyes blinking in their characteristic sequential pattern. An unfortunate incident, certainly. But your response was to physically strike a juvenile of another species without consulting the child's guardian or considering their cultural norms regarding physical discipline. Vexthul's scales flushed a deeper red. The Zephyrian Confederation has been a founding member of the Galactic Council for 5 centuries. We will not be lectured on proper protocol by a species that has barely mastered interstellar travel. Jake interrupted, his voice still deadly calm. That's what you were going to say, isn't it? That humans are too primitive, too new to the galactic community to deserve equal respect? A tense silence fell over the gathering. Colonel Montgomery, Admiral Zorax said after a moment, what are your intentions? Jake straightened, his military bearing more pronounced than ever. The human diplomatic mission is evacuating Nexus Station immediately. We will return to Earth space and await formal apologies and assurances that no human, particularly no human child, will ever again be subjected to physical discipline by any member of the Galactic Council races. This is unprecedented, Vexthul sputtered. You cannot simply... Watch us, Jake said simply. Across the reception hall, the evacuation was proceeding with remarkable efficiency. Human families with children were already being escorted onto the primary diplomatic shuttle, while staff members and security personnel maintained a protective cordon. Ambassador Chen, recognizing the inevitable, stepped forward. Admiral Zorax, as Earth's official representative, I must formally notify the Galactic Council that we are invoking Article 7 of the Diplomatic Protection Treaty. A human minor has been physically assaulted by a council representative, constituting a breach of our mutual defense agreements. Admiral Zorax's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of intense computation and consideration among Prontarians. Acknowledged, Ambassador Chen. The Security Committee will convene an emergency session to address this matter. Jake's wristcom vibrated with an incoming message. He checked it quickly. Commander Thalos confirming that Lily was safely aboard Shuttle 1 with a medical officer attending to her. Colonel Montgomery, Lieutenant Reeves reported, approaching rapidly. Evacuation is at 70% completion. Estimated time to total withdrawal, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Jake nodded. Maintain the perimeter. No one approaches our people without explicit authorization. The reception hall had become a flurry of activity. Other diplomatic delegations were now engaged in heated discussions, some clearly disturbed by the rapidly escalating situation. The Meridian energy beings had formed a tight cluster, their containment suits pulsing with rapid color changes that indicated intense communication. The Taurans had moved closer together, their massive bodies forming what could be interpreted as either a defensive or threatening formation. You cannot seriously be considering this as a violation of the Diplomatic Protection Treaty. Vexthul addressed Admiral Zorax, ignoring Jake entirely now. It was a minor correctional action, in accordance with Zephyrian cultural norms. Whether it constitutes a violation will be determined by the Security Committee. Zorax replied neutrally. However, I would remind you, Ambassador Vexthul, that the treaty specifically includes provisions regarding the physical safety of diplomatic dependents, with particular emphasis on juveniles. Jake's wristcom vibrated again, 90% evacuation complete. He allowed himself a moment of professional pride in his team's efficiency before returning his attention to the confrontation. Ambassador Vexthul, he said, you should know that within the next 30 minutes, every human vessel within 5 light years will be alerted to this incident. Within 2 hours, Earth's defense fleet will have repositioned to establish a defensive perimeter around our colonial systems. This is not a threat, merely a statement of fact regarding our standard security protocols when a human child is harmed. Vexthul's scales had now taken on a pale, almost ghostly hue, a sign of extreme agitation among Zephyrians. You would risk interstellar conflict over such a trivial matter? Trivial? Jake's voice finally lost its unnatural calm, cracking slightly with genuine emotion. You struck my daughter, and there is nothing trivial about that. A soft chime from Jake's wristcom signaled the completion of the evacuation. Every human diplomat, staff member, family dependent, and security officer was now aboard one of the 2 waiting shuttles. Only Jake, Ambassador Chen, and 2 senior security officers remained in the reception hall. Ambassador Chen, Jake said formally, the evacuation is complete. We await your orders. Sophia Chen, consummate diplomat that she was, took a moment to compose herself before addressing the gathered alien representatives. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, it is with profound regret that I must inform you of the immediate withdrawal of Earth's diplomatic mission from Nexus Station. We will be returning to Earth space to consult with our government regarding this unfortunate incident. She turned specifically to Admiral Zorax. We formally request an emergency session of the Galactic Council to address what we consider a serious breach of diplomatic protocol and the juvenile protection clause of our mutual defense treaties. Zorax inclined his upper body slightly, the Prontarian equivalent of a solemn nod. The request is noted and will be expedited, Ambassador Chen. With a final glance around the reception hall, Ambassador Chen turned and began walking toward the exit, flanked by her remaining security detail. Jake fell into step beside her, maintaining a protective position while scanning continuously for any potential threats. Was this really necessary, Colonel? Chen murmured, pitched low enough that only Jake could hear. With respect, Ambassador, yes. Jake replied just as quietly. This isn't just about diplomatic protocol. This is about sending a clear message about how humans expect their children to be treated. They reached the corridor leading to the docking bay where the shuttles waited. The station's automated announcement system was broadcasting notices in multiple languages about unexpected departure procedures, a subtle indication that this was no planned withdrawal. As they boarded the primary diplomatic shuttle, Jake took one last look back at the corridor leading to the reception hall. Several alien representatives had followed at a distance, observing the humans' departure with expressions ranging from concern to outright hostility. The shuttle doors sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and Jake felt the subtle vibration of the engines powering up. Within moments, they had detached from Nexus Station and were accelerating away, joining the secondary shuttle in formation. Jake made his way immediately to the medical bay where Lily was being examined by Dr. Samantha Rivera, the mission's chief medical officer. Lily sat on an examination table, looking small and vulnerable, a cooling compress held against her cheek. "Hi, Daddy," she called out when she saw him, her voice wobbling with lingering shock and fear. Jake crossed the room in 3 strides, gathering his daughter into a gentle hug. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." Dr. Rivera stepped back, giving them a moment of privacy before reporting. "Minor contusion and some swelling. No fractures or serious tissue damage. I've applied a regenerative compress that should take care of the bruising within a few hours." Jake nodded his thanks and still holding Lily close. "You're going to be okay," he whispered into her hair. "I promise." "I didn't mean to break it," Lily said, hiccuping slightly as fresh tears threatened. "It was so pretty, and I just wanted to see it better." "I know, sweetheart, it was an accident." Jake pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes. "What happened afterward was not your fault. No one has the right to hurt you. Ever. Do you understand?" Lily nodded solemnly, her small hand still pressed against the compress on her cheek. A soft chime announced an incoming communication. Ambassador Chen's voice came over the shuttle's intercom system. "Colonel Montgomery, please report to the command deck." Jake hesitated, looking at Lily. "Go, Daddy," she said with surprising maturity. "I'll be okay. Dr. Rivera says I can have ice cream after my treatment." The doctor smiled. "Medical necessity, nothing helps tissue regeneration like proper nutrition." With a final hug and a promise to return soon, Jake made his way to the command deck where Ambassador Chen and Commander Thalos were engaged in intense discussion. "Colonel," Chen acknowledged as he entered. "We've received communication from Earth Central Command. They're concerned about our abrupt departure." "Concerned or upset?" Jake asked. "Both," Chen admitted. "They want to know if this was a proportional response to the situation." Jake's expression hardened. They didn't see their child struck by an alien dignitary. "The Galactic Council has already convened an emergency session," Commander Thalos reported, checking the incoming data streams. "And we're picking up significant communication activity throughout the sector. Word is spreading fast." "What's our current status?" Jake asked. "Both shuttles performing nominally," Thalos replied. "We'll reach the jump point in approximately 40 minutes, after which we can engage FTL drives and return to Earth space within 3 days." Jake nodded, then turned to Ambassador Chen. "Ambassador, I understand that my actions may have created diplomatic complications. If Earth Central Command requires my resignation or disciplinary action, that won't be necessary, Colonel," Chen interrupted. "While your response was perhaps more decisive than diplomatic protocol might suggest, you were acting within your authority as head of security and as a parent. Besides," she added with a hint of a smile, "I've already informed Earth Central that I fully supported the evacuation decision." Jake raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Don't look so shocked, Colonel," Chen said. "I may be a diplomat, but I'm also human. What Ambassador Vexthul did was unacceptable by any standard. Sometimes the most effective diplomacy is showing exactly where your boundaries lie." "We're receiving another communication," Commander Thalos announced. "It's unusual. A direct transmission from the Arcturian empath delegation." "Put it through," Chen instructed. A holographic display materialized above the command console, showing the translucent form of an Arcturian elder, their neural networks pulsing with soft blue light. "Ambassador Chen, Colonel Montgomery." The Arcturian's voice was melodic, almost musical in its cadence. I am Elder Nerissa of the Arcturian Consensus. We wish to convey our profound distress at the events that transpired. Thank you, Elder Nerissa, Chen responded formally. We appreciate your concern. You misunderstand, the Arcturian continued. Our distress is not merely diplomatic. As empaths, we felt the child's pain and fear. We felt your protective rage. Colonel Montgomery, these emotions were overwhelming in their intensity. Jake stepped forward. I apologize if our emotional responses caused you discomfort, Elder. No apology is necessary, Nerissa said, neural pathways flashing with what appeared to be emphasis. Indeed, it is we who wish to offer support. The Arcturian delegation has formally petitioned the Galactic Council to consider this incident under the Juvenile Protection Clause. We have offered to provide empathic testimony regarding the emotional trauma inflicted upon your offspring. Jake and Chen exchanged surprised glances. The Arcturians were generally neutral in political matters, preferring to observe rather than participate in potentially contentious issues. That's unexpectedly generous, Elder Nerissa, Chen said carefully. It is neither generous nor political, the Arcturian replied. It is necessary. The Zephyrian delegation must understand that physical discipline of juveniles is not universally accepted, particularly across species boundaries. This understanding is essential for continued peaceful coexistence. We appreciate your support, Jake said sincerely. After the communication ended, Commander Thalos reported, We are picking up increased vessel activity in the sector. Multiple ships have altered course toward Nexus Station. Hostile? Jake asked immediately. Unknown, Thalos replied. But at least 3 of them are registering as Earth vessels. Before they could discuss this further, another communication alert sounded. This time, the holographic display showed Admiral Zorax of the Prontarian delegation. Ambassador Chen, Colonel Montgomery. The Admiral began without preamble. The Galactic Council's emergency session is underway. Ambassador Vexthul has presented his account of the incident. The Council requests your testimony. We're currently en route to Earth space, Chen replied. We can provide recorded statements. With respect, Ambassador, Zorax interrupted. The Council feels that this matter requires immediate resolution. The incident has already generated significant attention throughout the sector. Jake frowned. What kind of attention? Zorax's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession. 17 vessels from various Earth colonies have altered course toward Nexus Station. Their communications indicate they are responding to news of a human child being assaulted by an alien dignitary. Additionally, 3 Earth Defense Fleet vessels have moved to high alert status near the border of Council space. Jake suppressed a grimace. News traveled fast, and humans were notoriously protective of children, not just their own, but any human child. It was a cultural trait that had surprised many alien species when humans first joined the galactic community. The Council is concerned that this incident could escalate if not addressed promptly. Zorax continued. We request that you return to Nexus Station for a formal hearing. Ambassador Chen muted the transmission temporarily and turned to Jake. Your assessment, Colonel? Jake considered for a moment. It could be a trap, but Admiral Zorax has always been straightforward in his dealings with us. The Prontarians value factual accuracy above all else, and the approaching Earth vessels, probably private ships, merchant vessels, maybe some colonial security craft. Jake said, News of a human child being struck would trigger a strong response, especially among the frontier colonies. They're likely coming to show support, not to start a war. Chen unmuted the transmission. Admiral Zorax, We would be willing to return for a formal hearing under certain conditions. First, the safety of all human personnel must be guaranteed, particularly the child involved. Second, Ambassador Vextul must recuse himself from any decision-making role in this matter. Zorax's eyes blinked in sequence. Your conditions are reasonable and will be met. The Council awaits your return. After the transmission ended, Chen turned to Jake. This could be an opportunity, Colonel, not just to address what happened to Lily, but to establish clearer protocols regarding interspecies interactions with human children. Jake nodded slowly. I agree, but my primary concern remains Lily's safety. Of course, Chen said. She'll remain aboard the shuttle with Dr. Rivera and a full security detail while we attend the hearing, Commander Thalos interrupted. We are receiving multiple communications from Earth vessels approaching the sector. They're requesting updates on the situation. Jake moved to the communications console. Put them through. I'll speak to them. The first transmission was from Captain Maria Hernandez of the merchant vessel Stellar Horizon. Colonel Montgomery, we received word that a human child was attacked at Nexus Station. My crew and I have diverted to offer assistance. We're armed and ready to provide support if needed. Similar messages followed from other vessels, colony transports, mining ships, even a few privately owned yachts. All had changed course upon hearing about the incident. All were offering support, and most importantly, all were making it clear that they would not tolerate any threat to a human child. Jake addressed them collectively, explaining the situation and the decision to return to Nexus Station for a formal hearing. Your support is appreciated, he concluded. But what we need now is a show of unity, not force. Maintain position at the edge of the system. Let the Galactic Council see that humans stand together when our children are threatened, but also that we respect diplomatic processes. As the shuttles altered course to return to Nexus Station, Jake went to check on Lily. He found her sleeping peacefully in the medical bay, the regenerative compress having reduced the swelling on her cheek considerably. Dr. Rivera looked up from her monitoring equipment. She's doing fine, Colonel. Children are remarkably resilient. Jake sat beside the bed, gently stroking Lily's hair. Physically, yes, but I'm worried about the psychological impact. She has a strong support system, Rivera said, and she's seen how quickly you responded to protect her. That's powerful reassurance for a child. Jake nodded, his thoughts turning to the upcoming council hearing. I'm going to make sure this never happens again. Not to any human child. The return to Nexus Station was tense but uneventful. As promised, a security detail of neutral Taurans met them at the docking bay, providing an honor guard escort to the council chamber. Jake left Lily aboard the shuttle with Dr. Rivera and a team of 6 security officers, instructing them to maintain constant communication and be prepared for immediate departure if necessary. The Galactic Council chamber was an impressive space, designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of species with widely varying physical requirements. The central area was a circular platform surrounded by tiered seating, with specialized environmental chambers for species that required specific atmospheric conditions. As Jake and Ambassador Chen entered, accompanied by Commander Thalos and Lieutenant Reeves, they noted the chamber was nearly full. Representatives from most council races were present, an unusual occurrence for what had begun as a relatively minor diplomatic incident. Admiral Zorax presided from the central platform, with 6 other senior council members representing major galactic powers. Ambassador Vextul sat to one side, his scales now a subdued gray-blue, flanked by 2 other Zephyrian diplomats. Ambassador Chen, Colonel Montgomery. Zorax began formally. The Council appreciates your return to address this matter. Before we proceed, I must inform you that this hearing is being broadcast throughout Council space as a matter of significant interspecies diplomatic concern. Jake suppressed a frown. This meant the stakes had just been raised considerably. What had begun as a personal incident involving his daughter had now become a galactic diplomatic spectacle. The Council will hear all perspectives on this incident. Zorax continued. Ambassador Vexthul has already presented the Zephyrian account. We now invite you to provide the human perspective. Ambassador Chen stepped forward. Esteemed Council members, I come before you today not just as Earth's diplomatic representative, but as a human deeply concerned about an incident that strikes at the core of our values. In human society, children are considered sacred. Their protection is paramount, transcending political, cultural, and even species boundaries. She proceeded to give a measured account of the events, emphasizing that while the damage to the Zephyrian artifact was regrettable, the physical strike against a human child was, from the human perspective, a far more serious matter. We recognize and respect cultural differences, Chen concluded, but we ask the Council to understand that in this matter, humans cannot and will not compromise. The physical safety of our children is non-negotiable. Admiral Zorax acknowledged Chen's statement, then turned to Jake. Colonel Montgomery, as both the security chief and the father of the child involved, would you like to address the Council? Jake stepped forward, standing at military attention. I would, Admiral. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, aware that his words would be broadcast across multiple star systems. Council members, I stand before you today wearing two uniforms. One is visible, the uniform of Earth's Diplomatic Security Service. The other is invisible but far more important, that of a father. Jake paused, making eye contact with various council members. When Ambassador Vexthul struck my daughter, he didn't just violate diplomatic protocol. He violated something far more fundamental, the trust that exists between parent and child. Lily trusted me to keep her safe in an unfamiliar environment among unfamiliar beings. In that moment, I failed her. A murmur rippled through the chamber. I don't regret my response, Jake continued firmly. The evacuation was not just a security measure, it was a message. Humans will not tolerate any threat to our children, regardless of the source. This isn't aggression, it's protection. It isn't diplomacy, it's parenthood. Jake turned slightly to face Ambassador Vexthul directly. I understand that in Zephyrian culture, physical discipline may be acceptable, but understanding doesn't equal acceptance. If we are to coexist peacefully in this galactic community, certain boundaries must be respected across all cultural divides. The physical safety of children, of any species, should be one of those boundaries. As Jake concluded, Elder Nerissa of the Arcturian delegation requested permission to address the Council. Upon receiving approval, the translucent being moved to the center of the chamber. Neural pathways pulsing with gentle light. The Arcturian consensus wishes to provide empathic testimony. Nerissa began. With the Council's permission, we will share what we experienced during the incident. After receiving approval, Nerissa activated a specialized empathic projector, a device that translated Arcturian empathic readings into sensory experiences that other species could comprehend. The chamber was suddenly filled with emotions. Lily's shock and pain, Jake's protective rage, the confusion and fear of other humans present, and even Vexthul's own complex emotional state, a mixture of indignation, cultural pride, and a growing realization of potential consequences. When the empathic projection ended, a profound silence fell over the council chamber. For many of the assembled species, this direct emotional experience was more persuasive than any verbal testimony. Admiral Zorax broke the silence. The Council will now hear from Ambassador Vexthul, who has requested an opportunity to respond. Vexthul rose, his scales now a muted blue-green. Esteemed council members, I have reflected deeply on this incident. While my actions were in accordance with Zephyrian cultural norms, I now recognize that applying those norms across species boundaries without consideration for differing values was an error in judgment. The Zephyrian paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. In Zephyrian society, physical correction is seen as a form of respect, acknowledging that the recipient is worthy of education. It is never intended to cause lasting harm. However, the empathic testimony has made it clear that humans interpret such actions very differently. Vexthul turned toward Jake and Ambassador Chen. I offer formal apologies for the distress caused to the human juvenile and her parent. The Zephyrian Confederation is prepared to discuss new protocols for interspecies interactions involving juveniles to prevent such misunderstandings in the future. Jake remained expressionless, though internally he was surprised by Vexthul's apparent change in stance. He glanced at Elder Nerissa, wondering if the Arcturian empathic projection had influenced the Zephyrian's perspective. Admiral Zorax addressed the council. Having heard all testimonies, the council must now consider appropriate responses to this incident and potential revisions to our interspecies protocols regarding juveniles. Before Zorax could continue, Lieutenant Reeves approached Jake discreetly, speaking in a low voice. Colonel, we're receiving reports of multiple Earth vessels entering the system. Military vessels. Sir, at least 3 cruisers from the Earth Defense Fleet have taken up position at the edge of the system. Jake frowned. That's not possible. They couldn't have received authorization from Earth Command this quickly. Ambassador Chen, overhearing, looked concerned. Colonel? Before Jake could respond, a communication officer from the council staff approached Admiral Zorax, delivering what appeared to be urgent information. The Admiral's 6 eyes blinked rapidly in surprise. The council must be informed, Zorax announced, that 17 Earth vessels have now entered the Nexus system and established a defensive perimeter. Among them are 3 military cruisers identified as belonging to the Earth Defense Fleet. They are maintaining position but have activated defensive systems. All eyes turned to Jake and Ambassador Chen. This is not an authorized military action, Chen stated firmly. We have issued no requests for military support. Jake stepped forward. Admiral Zorax, with your permission, I'd like to establish communication with those vessels. After receiving approval, Jake was connected to the command deck of the EDF cruiser Vigilant. The holographic display showed Captain Eleanor Wright, a veteran officer whom Jake recognized from his military service. Captain Wright, Jake began formally. This is Colonel Montgomery. May I ask what brings the Vigilant and her sister ships to Nexus Station? Wright's expression was professionally neutral. Colonel Montgomery, we received reports that a human child was physically assaulted by an alien dignitary, and that the human diplomatic mission had been forced to evacuate under duress. We responded according to Defense Fleet protocols regarding the protection of Earth citizens, particularly minors. Jake maintained his composure, though inwardly he was stunned by the rapid response. Captain, I appreciate your concern, but the situation is being addressed through diplomatic channels. The human mission returned voluntarily to participate in a council hearing on the matter. Understood, Colonel. Wright replied. However, Defense Fleet protocols are clear. When a human child is threatened in foreign space, we establish a presence to ensure safe passage home if required. We will maintain position but will not interfere with diplomatic proceedings unless the safety of Earth citizens is compromised. After the communication ended, Jake turned back to the council. I apologize for this unexpected development. It appears that news of the incident spread faster than anticipated. Admiral Zorax's eyes blinked in sequence. The response is illuminating. It suggests that protection of juveniles is indeed a matter of extraordinary importance in human culture, beyond what the Council may have previously understood. Ambassador Chen seized the opportunity. Admiral, distinguished Council members, what you're witnessing is not military aggression. It's a cultural imperative. Throughout human history, across vastly different societies and eras, one constant has remained. The protection of children transcends all other considerations. She gestured toward the holographic display showing the Earth vessels holding position at the system's edge. Those ships came without official orders because the individuals commanding them, upon hearing that a human child had been struck, responded to something more fundamental than military protocol. They responded to a shared human value that supersedes political, diplomatic, and even military hierarchies. A thoughtful silence fell over the council chamber. After a moment, Admiral Zorax spoke. The Council recognizes that this incident has revealed a significant area where interspecies understanding must be improved. We propose the following resolution. First, formal acknowledgement that physical discipline of juveniles, while accepted in some cultures, is strictly prohibited in cross-species interactions without explicit prior consent from guardians. Zorax continued. Second, the establishment of a specialized committee to develop comprehensive guidelines for interactions involving juveniles of all council species, with particular attention to cultural differences in child-rearing practices. Third, an official notation in diplomatic records that Ambassador Vexthul's action, while culturally informed, constituted an unintentional violation of human cultural norms regarding juvenile protection. Jake and Ambassador Chen exchanged glances. The resolution was more substantial than either had expected, suggesting that the Council was taking the matter seriously indeed. Earth's delegation accepts these proposals, Chen said formally. We would be pleased to participate in the development of the new guidelines. As the Council session concluded, Jake received a message from Dr. Rivera aboard the shuttle. Lily is awake and asking for you, Colonel. The regenerative treatment has been successful. There's no remaining physical trauma. Jake excused himself and hurried back to the shuttle, finding Lily sitting up in the medical bay, drinking what appeared to be hot chocolate. The mark on her cheek had faded to almost nothing, though a slight discoloration remained. "Hey, Daddy," she called out, brightening at his appearance. "Dr. Rivera says I'm all better now." Jake sat beside her, gathering her into a gentle hug. "I'm so glad, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Lily considered the question with childish seriousness. "My face doesn't hurt anymore, but I still feel bad about breaking that crystal thing." "Was it really important?" Jake nodded. "It was important to the Zephyrians, yes. But that doesn't mean what happened afterward was okay." Lily was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are they still mad at me?" "No, sweetheart," Jake assured her. "In fact, Ambassador Vexthul has apologized for what he did." "Really?" Lily looked surprised, but he seemed so angry. "Sometimes people react in ways they later regret," Jake explained. "And sometimes it takes seeing things from someone else's perspective to understand why your actions might have been wrong." Lily nodded slowly, processing this. "Like when I got angry at Mia for taking my tablet without asking. But then you explained that she just wanted to show me something she thought I'd like." Jake smiled. "Exactly like that. Different people and different species have different ways of seeing the world. Part of growing up is learning to understand those differences." As they talked, Ambassador Chen entered the medical bay. "How's our brave diplomat in training doing?" she asked with a warm smile. "Much better, Ambassador," Lily replied politely. "Colonel Montgomery," Chen said. "I've just received word that the Council has formally adopted the resolutions proposed by Admiral Zorax." Additionally, 17 other council races have already volunteered to participate in the Juvenile Protection Committee. Jake raised an eyebrow in surprise. 17? Chen nodded. It seems your impromptu speech made quite an impression. That, combined with the rather dramatic appearance of Earth's vessels, has convinced many council races that this is an issue worth addressing comprehensively. What happens now? Jake asked. We'll return to Earth as planned, Chen replied. But with some unexpected diplomatic victories, and the Council has agreed to review all existing protocols regarding family members in diplomatic settings, with a particular focus on juvenile protection measures. She smiled at Lily. And it seems you, young lady, have inadvertently made history. The new guidelines will be formally known as the Lily Protocols in diplomatic circles. Lily's eyes widened. Really? They're naming them after me? Really, Chen confirmed. Sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs come from unexpected sources. As they prepared for departure, Jake received one final communication, a private message from Ambassador Vexthul. Against his better judgment, he accepted the transmission. Colonel Montgomery, Vexthul began, his scales now a subdued blue. I wish to convey a personal message, separate from my official apology. Jake waited silently. In my 5 centuries of diplomatic service, Vexthul continued, I have encountered many species, many cultures. Humans are among the most contradictory, capable of both remarkable compassion and terrifying aggression. Today, I witnessed both, and I understand now that they are not separate traits but interconnected aspects of your species' protective nature. The Zephyrian paused. The swiftness with which other humans responded to this incident, crossing vast distances without official orders, simply because a child, not even their own, had been harmed. It is a form of collective response that Zephyrians find difficult to comprehend, yet impossible to ignore. We responded as any human would, Jake said simply. And therein lies the lesson for all council races. Vexthul replied, Your species' devotion to juvenile protection is not merely cultural. It appears to be fundamental to your collective identity. This is valuable knowledge for future interactions. After the communication ended, Jake joined Ambassador Chen on the shuttle's command deck as they prepared for departure. The Earth vessels that had arrived in such dramatic fashion were now forming an honor guard escort for the diplomatic shuttles, a gesture that would not be lost on the watching council races. A rather theatrical conclusion to what began as a simple reception, Chen remarked, watching as Nexus Station receded on the view screen. Humans can be theatrical when it comes to protecting our children, Jake replied. It's one of our better qualities. As the shuttles accelerated toward the jump point that would take them back to Earth space, Jake reflected on the events of the past 24 hours. What had begun as a diplomatic crisis had transformed into an opportunity for deeper interspecies understanding. The Lily Protocols would ensure that no human child, and hopefully no child of any species, would experience what his daughter had endured. Lily joined him at the viewing port, watching as the stars began to elongate with the shuttle's increasing velocity. Daddy, she said thoughtfully, do you think alien kids have daddies who protect them too? Jake put his arm around her shoulders. I'm sure they do, sweetheart. They might look different, and they might show it differently. But I think protecting your children is probably universal. Then maybe we're not so different after all. Lily concluded with the simple wisdom of childhood. Jake smiled. Maybe not, and that's a good place to start. As the shuttles reached the jump point and prepared for the transition to faster-than-light travel, the communication system broadcast a final message from Admiral Zorax of the Galactic Council. To all Earth vessels departing Nexus Station, the Council acknowledges your demonstrated commitment to juvenile protection. We recognize this not as aggression, but as a cultural imperative worthy of respect and accommodation in future diplomatic relations. Safe journey, and know that the lessons of this day will inform Council policies for generations to come. The message ended just as the shuttles engaged their FTL drives, the stars blurring into streaks of light as they began the journey home. Jake held Lily close, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with military strategy or diplomatic maneuvering and everything to do with being a father who had protected his child. In the vast expanse of space, among civilizations spanning thousands of worlds and millions of years of evolution, some principles remained constant. The protection of children, the future of any species, was one such principle. It had taken a moment of crisis to reveal this commonality, but in doing so, it had opened the door to deeper understanding between humans and the galactic community they had joined. As Earth's diplomatic mission returned home, news of the Lily protocols spread throughout human space. The story of how a single slap had prompted the evacuation of an entire embassy in under 2 minutes brought unauthorized military vessels across interstellar distances and ultimately led to new galactic standards for juvenile protection became something of a legend in diplomatic circles. And somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Council, a formal notation was added to the historical record. In matters involving the safety and well-being of human children, standard diplomatic procedures may be superseded by cultural imperatives. In such cases, expect swift, unified, and non-negotiable responses. The humans are not being aggressive, they are being parents. For Jake Montgomery, however, the most important outcome wasn't diplomatic at all. It was the knowledge that his daughter would grow up in a galaxy that better understood and respected the most fundamental of human values. That children, regardless of species, deserved protection, respect, and the chance to make mistakes without fear of harm. As Lily fell asleep beside him, watching the hypnotic patterns of FTL travel through the viewing port, Jake made a silent promise, not just to his daughter but to all the children of Earth. The galaxy would learn to understand this essential human truth, or it would continue to be reminded, one diplomatic incident at a time. Some lessons, after all, were worth teaching repeatedly until they became as universal as the stars themselves.